As all of you know, I haven't really studied the scriptures, but I have received teachings on the 37 Bodhisattva practices and the Bodhicharya Avatara from Khenpo Tenzin Zangbo, and also from Gachin Rinpoche, so from lamas that possess great blessings. So a few times I have received teachings from them. And as you also know, I do not have a fancy name, and I have really no learning or studying at all. I don't have great learning, and so however, some of the disciples they requested that I teach the Dharma, so that's why I'm going to speak about that to the best of my abilities. And so maybe it will be of some benefit, and maybe it will not be of any benefit, but if you're someone like me, like myself, it might be of benefit. And so from my own side, I do have a good motivation. And then from your own side, you also should have the motivation to listen to the Dharma. Regarding the motivation that the correct motivation to have when we listen to a Dharma teaching, so that is explained in great detail in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and also in the words of my perfect teacher. And so now that we have assembled together and you're listening to the Dharma, you should, your ears should not be distracted by anything else. And you should listen to the Dharma single pointedly and keep the meaning of the words that you hear in mind. And when you listen to the Dharma, you should be free from pride and attachment and anger and ignorance. And when we listen to the Dharma, we should abandon the three faults of listening to the Dharma. And that is, we should not be like an upside down vessel, which is like when you're not listening to the teachings, then you can't receive the teachings, just like when a vessel is upside down. And also we should not just be physically present, but also remember if the words that are being said, retain the words that are being said during the teaching. And if not, if we don't retain the words, then we're just like a vessel that has a hole, so everything leaves again. And thirdly, we should not be a vessel that is a filthy vessel. Like in a filthy vessel, you pour in the content of the Dharma, it becomes filthy. Just like when the mind is afflicted by the three poison when listening to the Dharma. So these are the three faults to abandon. So even though our body is physically present in the teaching setting, if the mind is distracted elsewhere, then it's of no benefit. And also, even if you hear the words, but you don't really think about them, you don't keep them in mind, then it's of also no benefit. And so also when you listen to the Dharma and you think that, oh, I know it much better than he does, I have more learning than he does, then also it's of no benefit. So we should listen to the Dharma without attachment, anger, or ignorance, and should listen with a mind of faith and trust, and with a motivation, a vast motivation of bodhicitta for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm thinking that today I'm listening to the Dharma, I will reflect on the Dharma in order to bring all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment. And so this is the motivation that we should give rise to. And so what we call the Dharma is something that we need to change or kind of transform our mind, our motivation. That's the purpose of the Dharma. And so normally we always think just about ourselves. So we transform that into thinking about others by cultivating an altruistic mind of bodhicitta. and so when we listen into the Dharma, we should listen with such a motivation, and then next our mind opens up if we give rise to faith and trust. And I'm not saying that you have to develop faith in me, but the three jewels, knowing that those who follow the three jewels, then through the blessings and the kindness of the three jewels, they can actually bring you to the state of liberation and all-knowingness, to the state of unchanging enlightenment. And the Buddha considered all sentient beings with great love, and his teachings benefit countless sentient beings. So therefore we should develop faith and trust in the Buddha, and also in the noble Sangha, the followers of the Buddha. So if you listen with such a state of mind, then the mind will open up, and I think that this will lead to a great benefit for sentient beings. As Padu Rinpoche had said, the body needs to rest in the place of meditation, and then the mind relaxes within that, and then within that state we engage in a practice of listening, reflecting, and meditating. So we should listen to the Dharma from within such a state of mind. So today we are going to speak about the 37 Bodhisattva practices. And I personally, I'm not able to give a very detailed commentary on that. The deeds of the Bodhisattvas, the practices of the Bodhisattvas are extremely vast and profound. And I'm not able to speak on that in great detail, but I will give a brief account on that. And for that, I'm going to base the teachings on a book, a commentary on the 37 practices. So as you listen, please keep it in mind. So if you have a little of the booklet of the 37 practices, it would be good if you would follow along in the book. And so it begins with Namo Lokeshvaraya, which means I pay homage to the Lord of the world, Chinrezig. And then it says, though seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you strive solely for the benefit of beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chinrezig, at all times I humbly pay homage to you with my three doors. So as for the meaning of this line, it says that even though he possesses with great love and omniscient wisdom, he has realized that phenomena neither come nor go, and he has freed himself of the extremes of eternalism and nihilism, the 8 extremes and all elaborations. Still, with great love and compassion for all sentient beings, and being inseparable from the manifestation of all the Buddha's compassion, the noble Chinrezig, all the spiritual masters are prostrate to with the three doors. And so it is an homage to the Supreme Guru, also all the spiritual masters who are embodiments of the noble Chinrezig. So we prostrate to them all with respectful body, speech, and mind, because the gurus are the ones who show us the path of what to do and what not to do. And the gurus are inseparable from Chinrezig. So therefore, we prostrate to them with our three doors, respectful three doors. And then next it says, the perfect Buddha's source of all benefit and happiness arrives through accomplishing the sublime Dharma. Since that depends on knowing how to practice, I will explain what Bodhisattvas do. So then the commentary, it says that So the Holy Dharma, the Holy Dharma is the source of all temporary benefit and ultimate happiness, and the achievement of complete Buddhahood depends on knowing how to practice this Holy Dharma properly. And it's important to practice the Dharma properly to achieve this state of ultimate enlightenment. And so therefore the great bodhisattvas of the past with great compassion, they engaged in these practices, combining the skillful means of compassion and the great wisdom. And so Ngulchu Thome, the author of this text, then says, makes a commitment to explaining the way these bodhisattvas practiced. And so Ngulchu Thome also says that when writing down the 37 bodhisattva practices, the way he composed these practices is not a composition that just comes from his own kind of thinking, but it is the result of having seen many of the scriptures and having really reflected on them and meditated and practiced these scriptures, and really having looked into how all the past Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas in the beginning, middle, and end, how they have actually engaged in the practice. So he is saying that I'm going to explain it exactly in this way. So he composed this the 37 practices based on like 3 authenticities. First is the authenticity of the Buddha's words. Secondly, the authenticity of the treatises composed by the Buddha's followers. And third, the authenticity of his own experience. And Ngulchu Thome himself was a great bodhisattva. And actually, so he developed bodhicitta in his own mind, but even the place that he lived in, everyone would develop bodhicitta there, everyone surrounding him. And not just the people, but even the animals would cultivate bodhicitta. So that he had this great power of causing everyone around him to give rise to bodhicitta. He was a Lama of great practice and also a great scholar. So, for example, in the place where he lived in, the wolves and the sheep would coexist together peacefully. Normally, a wolf would immediately eat a sheep, but in his place, they would not harm the sheep. Or, for example, the dogs and the, I guess, what is it, a marmot, like a kind of like a like a rat that goes on the ground, a mouse that goes on the ground. So that normally the dogs would eat them, but in his place, also these animals would coexist peacefully. So Ngulchu Thome was a true bodhisattva, and because he really gave rise to bodhicitta, he had the powers to also impart these teachings on to others. And on those many masters who followed him were ocean-like. There were so many who followed him, and they all followed him with great devotion. And he also saw the face of Chenrezig directly. Chenrezig appeared to him directly. So he possessed all the causes and conditions necessary for such a composition. So what he wrote is not just basically basically knowing how to speak eloquently, but he actually really based his composition on the Buddha's words and also his own experience. And so therefore, in 37 verses, he presents the way in which bodhisattvas practice. And so it begins with how they reflect, what is their way of thinking. So the first verse says, having gained this great ship of freedom and fortune, so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence, listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction. This is the way of a bodhisattva. So the first word is the preliminary to the composition, and is the cause of first entering the Dharma. So it says here, the great ship of freedom and fortune. So freedom refers to the 8 free states, so being free from 8 unfree states. And then fortune refers to there are 5 fortunes, or 5 personal fortunes, and then 5 circumstantial fortunes, so 10 fortunes. In total, there's 18 freedoms and fortunes. And the precious human body is likened to a great ship that helps you cross the ocean of samsara. The precious human body is difficult to find in terms of causes, examples, and numbers. And once it is found, it has the potential to accomplish something very meaningful, that is the state of liberation and omniscience. And therefore, one should not waste this opportunity meaninglessly. So right now, self and other sentient beings are stuck in this vast ocean of samsara. And in order to become liberated from this ocean, these bodhisattvas apply themselves day and night at all times without distraction in the practice of the great vehicle, in reflecting on the instructions received from the spiritual masters of the great vehicle, and having reflected in, it says in the commentary, 4 ways of reasoning. They in this way then keep the teachings properly in mind, and this then constitutes the essence of the preliminary practices of the bodhisattvas. The preliminary practices are very important. Je Tsongkhapa said in the stages to enlightenment that one needs to first cultivate renunciation, and then cultivate bodhicitta, and then cultivate the view of emptiness. So first, in order to practice the Dharma, we need to develop renunciation with samsara and understand the importance of a precious human body with freedoms and fortunes. And even though we have found such a body, there are many causes that can lead to the death of this body. And there are very few causes that sustain the life of this body. And also the timing of our death is uncertain. So with this in mind, the bodhisattvas have engaged in practice. So the human body is difficult to find in terms of causes, illustrations, and numbers. And if you just think about the numbers, actually, we can quickly understand how difficult it is to find a precious human body. So for example, if you think about just how many animals there live in the water and then on the ground, in the air, and in comparison to that, how many human beings are there? And then we can very clearly see how difficult it is to find a precious human body. It's extremely rare when we just compare animals and humans. But then even within the humans, it's very rare to find a human being who actually practices the Dharma. And then even within those who do practice the Dharma, it's even more rare to find someone who practices the Dharma properly. And so the more in depth we go, the more rare we can see it becomes to find this precious human body. There's this quote by Shantideva from the Bodhicharya Avatara saying that the precious human body with freedoms and fortunes is extremely difficult to found. And once it is found, a wise being uses this precious human existence in order to liberate themselves from the ocean of great suffering. So it's very important that once we have found this precious human body, that we also use it in a meaningful way. So it's just like a ship. You can use a ship to cross an ocean. And so similarly, you can use a precious human body to cross, to transcend the great ocean of samsaric suffering. The past Kadampa masters also have said that now that you have found a precious human body with freedoms and fortunes, you have to find the essence, extract the essence of this human existence, meaning that you should make effort in the practice of the Holy Dharma and become liberated now that you have this precious human body. Because now that you have found this human body, if you're not actually using it for practicing the Holy Dharma, then it is uncertain whether or not you will find this opportunity again in the future. Also, in the Bodhicharya Avatara, Shantideva says that now that if you're not using this precious human body now to accomplish benefit, then don't expect to receive another human body in the future. It won't come around again. So you might think that I'm going to practice the Dharma in the future in some other lifetime, but it's very uncertain, very questionable whether or not we actually will have all these favorable conditions complete again to practice the Dharma. And also, Choba Atisha, he said that now you have found a perfect human body that allows you to practice the Holy Dharma. It is extremely difficult to find, and you will not easily find this opportunity again. And therefore, now apply yourself with great effort in the practice of the Holy Dharma. So there are many more quotes like that from the past Kadampa masters. We just don't have enough time to go into all of them, so I will leave it at that. So as we said, the precious human body is difficult to find, and the timing of its death is uncertain. The causes of death are uncertain. And we all are aware of this, we know this, and yet even though we know this, we are lazy and we are distracted, and we are caught up in a lot of hopes. And so therefore we are not able to practice the Dharma properly. So anyways, this is how the past bodhisattvas, the masters, have reflected and have practiced, have meditated. And since we are their followers, it's important for us also to again and again reflect on the uncertainty of the timing of death and the uncertainty of the causes leading to death. When the Buddha first taught the Dharma, he actually taught on impermanence. And so it shows that for us, it's extremely important for our Dharma practice to reflect on impermanence. Then the next second verse says, attachment to loved ones steers you like water. Hatred for enemies blazes like fire. In the darkness of ignorance, you forget what to adopt and what to avoid. Abandon your homeland. This is the way of a bodhisattva. And so then the commentary says that, so at a time when one is then practicing the Dharma, if one continues to remain in one's homeland, then one is very likely to develop attachment to one's parents and families, friends, spouses, and so on. And this attachment steers the mind like water. And then also, on the other hand, there in one's homeland, one encounters enemies or those that one dislikes. And once such a dislike arises in the mind, then and this dislike, this aversion, naturally burns away all our thoughts of virtue, and hatred and anger blazes like fire. And then in the midst of this, we forget the virtuous actions that we should adopt and the non-virtuous actions that we should discard. So in the midst of that, we lose our mindfulness of what to do and what not to do. So we are stuck in the darkness of ignorance. And therefore, for bodhisattvas, one's homeland is the root of all attachment, anger, and ignorance. And therefore, bodhisattvas abandon their homeland. So if we remain in our homeland, we will develop thoughts of attachment toward our family, our parents, our friends, and an aversion, hatred against our enemies, those that we dislike. And in this way, we become controlled by afflictions and lose out on the opportunity to practice the Dharma. And so it is because in one's homeland, there are a lot of things that we need to do. There's a lot of constant activity. There's a lot of conflict, interpersonal conflict. And that is why it is said that a true Dharma practitioner should not remain in such a place that is very conducive for the afflictive emotions of attachment, anger, and ignorance. Because in these places, we lose our opportunity for Dharma practice. And therefore, the commentary says that one should abandon the life of a householder and become ordained, live a monastic life, and in this way abandon all forms of attachment and aversion, and therefore one becomes able to become an authentic follower of the Buddha. So for us, it is difficult to abandon our homeland, but what we should do is try to sustain mindfulness and awareness as much as we can, and try to minimize our attachment to friends and hatred, aversion against enemies as much as possible. And when we think about enemies actually do not really exist inherently. They just appear that way due to a temporary condition. And an enemy may become a friend, and a friend may become an enemy. Enemies and friends are uncertain. And if we understand that, then we will not develop such a strong attachment to our objects of attachment, or a strong aversion against our enemies. So therefore, it's good to think about the uncertainty of enemies and friends, and in this way try to minimize our attachment and hatred as much as possible. And so then we come to, and we move on to verse number 3, which speaks about the qualities of seclusion. So it says, when negative places are abandoned, disturbing emotions gradually decline. Without distractions, virtuous practice naturally grows. When the mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma arises. Live alone in seclusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. So then, after having abandoned negative places, one's homeland, one should then seclude oneself to a place of isolation. So then when one has abandoned a negative place, one's homeland, one isolates oneself from the afflictive emotions of attachment and anger, ignorance. And as one lives in this place of isolation, these thoughts, this afflictive emotion gradually decline. So, and then as a result of the decline of afflictive emotions, virtuous practice naturally increases. So one's ethical discipline naturally becomes pure, because there is no friend or a spouse and so on there that we are attached to. So just naturally the mind will turn towards the Dharma as we free ourselves from the various distractions. So then, in the absence of all these distractions, the mind can abide single-pointedly in a state of samadhi. And within such a state, then the three virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind will just naturally increase. So in such a place, the mind becomes naturally peaceful, it calms down, and therefore it becomes like pliable for Dharma practice. The mind becomes clear, and with clear mind, we understand the meaning of the Dharma. So our wisdom, our awareness becomes clear, and in this way, the three trainings and our practice will naturally develop. All qualities will naturally arise. So for that reason, it is the Bodhisattva's practice to isolate themselves to a place of seclusion. So especially for beginning practitioners, it's important to rely on such places of seclusion. Because as we said before, when we seclude ourselves to such a place, then there are no objects that will trigger our attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And then the mind becomes kind of, we can be usable, like flexible for practice. So for us now, we do think about the Dharma, and we also think about impermanence. But even though we have moments of reflecting on these, still we are constantly bombarded with all kinds of stimuli. We see things, we hear things, and so forth. We look at things, and we very quickly we lose all our reflection on the Dharma. We constantly lose it. Once Milarepa was staying in a mountain hermitage with Rejungpa, his disciple, and so one time Rejungpa said to Milarepa, "I need to go to central Tibet, to Lhasa." And Milarepa said, "Don't go, because if you go to Lhasa, then the little virtue that you have right now will completely disappear." And actually, we have to remember that Rejungpa already stayed together with Milarepa at that point for a long time, for many years, and he has gained quite some stability in meditation already. And still, Milarepa told him not to go, because if he went, he would lose the little virtue that he now possesses. So we can see for us, it's even more difficult, because we do not even possess a fraction of Rejungpa's practice. It's very difficult for us to develop a virtuous state of mind. And even if it arises, it goes away very quickly. So our virtuous mind is quite weak. So therefore, if we seclude ourselves to a place of isolation, then gradually these negativities in our mind will weaken, and we will develop renunciation to samsara and trust and faith in the holy Dharma. And that is a great merit. So therefore, it is better to seclude oneself to a place of isolation and not stay in like a busy town, for example, a city, where there is a lot of people and a lot of busyness going on. So one should seclude oneself to a place where there is no one else, and where there is a little stimuli, things that we see and hear and so on. In a sutra, the Mahayana Sutra Lankara, the ornament of the sutras, the Buddha the Buddha said, it defined what defines a proper place of isolation. And so he says that it is a conducive or like a positive place, and with positive place means that a place that where one doesn't easily get sick, for example, through the soil, the earth, or the water, or like air pollution and so on. And so all of these kind of pollutants lead to sickness. So with a place that is free of such pollution, and also a place that is free of like robbers and thieves, and free of harmful animals like carnivorous animals or poisonous snakes and like other wild animals that can cause harm. And also it should be a place where there might be companions with a similar intent and activity, similar mind and activity, and also a place where it is easy for one to have access to provisions, so that to sustain one's life. So it is said in that sutra that if one stays in such a place, then all qualities will arise. And again, in the Bodhicharyavatara, entering the way of bodhisattvas, it says, so if one stays in such a place of isolation, then in such a place, the afflictive emotions of attachment and aversion will not arise. And it is such a positive, pleasant place. It's a place where the mind comes naturally to a state of ease. And it is a place where you do not encounter conflict or all kinds of other troubles. So if you live in such a place, then your mind will naturally come to a state of peace, to a state of calm. There are so many qualities that one could express in terms of what is an isolated place, but to just summarize them into a few. In a place of isolation, thoughts will calm down, and the mind becomes conducive for bodhicitta, for love and compassion, and especially the bodhicitta that puts others before oneself, and so exchanges self with others. And another Kadampa master, Lama, had said, now is not the time to sustain a retinue of like students and children. And now is the time to rely on a place of isolation. That is, if you wish to die without regrets. And the next, number 4, is the verse on impermanence and giving up concerns for worldly life. And it says, family and long-time companions will part from each other. Possessions gained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, a guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Now we take a break for 30 minutes and then we come back.
Okay. Sancho Sancho Rambo Je Maje Bana Je Je Ba Nya Ba Me Ba One Gonda Ba. Okay, thank you.